We've forgotten what it is to be sacred. We actually have forgotten what it means to feel sacred and to behave and act in a sacred way. And the plants really help us to get back in touch with that, takes us get in touch with that deeply spiritual aspect of ourselves that has been forgotten in our materialistic world. There's a whole sliding scale of sacredness. So the more you work with plants, the more you work in ritual, it just takes you deeper and deeper into that deep reverence for life itself and for the gift that we've been given.
Hello, dear ones. Thank you to all our members who joined Soul Space last night for a powerful and moving session. If you want to join our membership and support the making of this show, as well as come together with incredible people from across the world, you can find out more at allthatweare.org/support. The next Soul Space will be in November at the same time on the 22nd, and details for that are in our newsletter. I know that we are all feeling a lot right now with everything that is happening in the world. I would love to speak to this on this show as it feels so important. These episodes, this one and the upcoming ones of the podcast, have been planned in advance. And I'm sensitive to reaching out to those directly affected to speak at this time whilst they're experiencing high levels of shock, grief, and trauma. I would love to do some episodes that really do speak directly to this conflict and bring these important voices into the All That We Are community. If you know anyone that you think would be brilliant to be part of this podcast, then do write to us and share their details or introduce us so that we can make that happen in the future. A dear friend shared with me an article written by Judith Butler called The Compass of Mourning. And I want to read you these words that the piece ends with. She says, "The world I want is one that would oppose the normalization of colonial rule and support freedom, a world that would, in fact, realize the deepest desires of all the inhabitants of those lands to live together in freedom, nonviolence, equality, and justice. This hope, no doubt, seems naive, even impossible to many. Nevertheless, some of us must rather wildly hold to it, refusing to believe that the structures that now exist will exist forever. For this, we need our poets and our dreamers, the untamed fools, the kind who know how to organize. All that we are is here for the dreamers, our space to share and refill our cups so that we may create beauty in this world. And this is why I always start with a question that is around collective vision, and why I have been asking people now for 13 years to share their vision of the world that they want to live in, the future that they choose for our collective, for our humanity, for our more than human world, for this planet. Because when we are connected to our visions, only then are they possible. We have to dream it to be able to see it, to be able to do it. And that is why each of us holding these visions is such big work at this time. My guest for this episode is Emma Fitchett, who some of you may know as Emma Farrell. She is a plant spirit healer, shamanic teacher, and author. She holds a master's degree in the preservation and development of wisdom culture and the art of liberation in the Tibetan Buddhist Mahayana tradition, writing her thesis on understanding the nature of the self through lucid dreaming. She has been initiated and trained in Indigenous healing and magical lineages of the British Isles and the Ecuadorian Amazon, is a yew tree mysteries initiate and holds the lineage of the white serpent. She is also a geomancer, pranic healer, psychic surgeon, and entity removal specialist. She also runs the Plant Consciousness Apothecary, a remote healing practice, and is the author of Journeys with Plant Spirits. In this episode called Illuminating Inner Worlds, we explore the themes of plant medicines, spiritual sovereignty, and inner balance as we speak to the question, how do we work with plant medicines in a meaningful and respectful way? We hope this episode gives you more knowledge and permission to deepen your relationship with plant spirits in a meaningful and beautiful way, and that it makes your experience of this world so much more alive. Welcome to All That We Are with me, your host, Amisha Gadiali. On this show, we explore the weave between activism, the sacred, creativity, and regeneration, the spaces where our inner and outer worlds dance. From healing trauma to nature connection, to new technologies to ancient wisdom, it's time for us to move beyond silos and into an integrated way of being. Every one of us has ideas and personal experiences to share that can lead us to a more beautiful future. Despite the challenges we face as a global community, or the pressures we meet in our daily lives, when we stop and dare to listen, to ask ourselves the big questions, and to share what we are already doing and envisioning, we create the futures of our wildest dreams. And we begin to embody all that we are becoming, and all that is possible. Emma, it is an absolute delight to welcome you to All That We Are. Thank you for coming and sharing your wisdom with us here.
Oh, thank you, Amisha. It's my pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
I would love for you to tell us what is alive for you with this question. What are the futures of your wildest dreams?
So I suppose it has to be a reflection of my own journey in this life and the realizations that I've come to about why I'm here, set within the context of the bigger vision of what's happening globally and within the consciousness of humanity. And we're clearly in the process of a spiritual awakening on the planet. It might not feel like it or look like it on the external world because of all the horrors and the wars and the oppression that's going on all over the place. However, it's almost like that's a necessity that has to happen to kind of bring out from the shadow the real intentions of perhaps the opposing forces of the world. And meanwhile, in the hearts of the common man and woman, there's a widening expansion of consciousness happening where people are much more open to accepting the existence of the unseen world, deepening connection to the spirit world. You can see that evidence in the explosion of shamanism, the explosion of yoga in the last 30 years, the explosion of plant medicine. It's just bringing people into a much deeper connection with themselves. And so what I see as a future, the kind of how that's evolving and how that's moving, the trajectory of that, is that yes, it might seem like things are getting worse on the external world. And of course, we're in deep compassion for those who are suffering, absolutely. But there's also, while we see that devolution in the external world, there's this evolution of the internal world. And so on a spiritual level, what's happening is that we're evolving into deeper connection with our higher selves, or our highest self, our superconsciousness. In Steiner terminology, it's the mental sheath of the body taking form. So we've mastered our astral body, almost, not quite. We're still trying to balance our emotions. But our astral body has form. So the next stage of evolution is the mental layer. And that's our unconditional love. That's our eternal spirit. And so it's awakening that eternal aspect of us. And I just see this happening more and more. And once people start to really understand our eternal nature and who they truly are at that unconditional level, then the internal and external world are actually no different. So that will actually roll out into the external world eventually. I don't know the kind of timeline we're looking at, but you can see that when we bring in a balance, that rolls out into our external world as well, into our relationships, into what happens in our life. The more destructive, suffering situations don't seem to occur quite as much when we've brought in a balance to ourselves, an illumination to our inner world. So the more that happens across the world, and I see it happening at quite a quick rate, the more that happens, then the less war and suffering we'll see in the world, and the more harmony we'll experience. I don't know. I hope it's going to happen a lot quicker than it actually is. The world is a big place, and so things move really slowly. But I do see a much more unified consciousness coming in. That's just a really beautiful thing to hold, and it will be a beautiful thing to experience.
Thank you. I love the vision that you share. You feel is really happening and that this is already in action. I feel like that's quite hard for a lot of people to hear that are really feeling the suffering, be it war and violence or with health and mental health and these different ways that so many people are being brought to their knees. And I wonder what it is that you can share with those people or those that are holding space for people that are deep in suffering at this time.
Yeah. In order to evolve and in order to heal, we have to bring things up to the surface, out of the shadows, and it's not pretty. In order to evolve, we have to shine the light of awareness into those dark recesses of the mind, into the dark recesses of the human soul, to illuminate it and bring it to the surface so it can be healed. So while it's not pleasant to do that, the way of cancelling things out or just getting rid of unhelpful feelings because we don't like them hasn't really worked very well. And we've all been inheriting traumas from our ancestors and etc. that so many people are suffering under the weight of. And we just can't carry them anymore. And I think we need to therefore have a new approach, that rather than just trying to get rid of symptoms, we actually get down to the root cause of something, our issues, etc. But it's not easy. If it was, then we wouldn't be in the situation that we're in. And some people aren't able to do this. And we have to accept that those of us who are willing to do that can't expect everybody to do it. We've all come here to learn. We've all incarnated at this time to learn different things. And some of us have come here to do the deep dive into the darkness, and some of us haven't. We just have to be as much in compassion for those who are suffering, because this information about the awakening is not going to be understood by everyone, therefore, and not accepted by everyone, which is fine. But as long as we keep doing our work, the more, I'm sure you've kind of maybe experienced it yourself, that the more work and inner work and shadow integration you do for yourself, it has an effect on your immediate family. So I've seen it with my parents, that the more inner balance that I've done and the more awakening that I've done for myself, there's just been this beautiful knock-on effect for my parents. And that's beautiful to watch. And so those people who are doing this kind of work, then that we're helping anyway. And just by holding space is helping anyway. And even though my parents perhaps aren't able to do that deep dive at their age, don't have the kind of awareness that we've got around how healing works, then at least I can be helping them anyway.
Yeah, thank you, Emma. And it doesn't always look like it's happening, as in, like in my case, my mother's still going through a really difficult illness. But if I wasn't doing what I'm doing and holding space, I don't know how much worse it might be for her. And so we have to really trust and know that in our own lives and in those around us, that it doesn't mean that everything's going to be perfect and easy when we show up, but it's still contributing to this collective experience.
Absolutely. And also connecting to your mum, okay, at that kind of physical level, she's still very much suffering. But at a spiritual level, you've probably helped her so much because of all the holding that you've been doing and the care that you've given. Of course, we're kind of caught up in the day-to-day kind of routine and struggle of things. But actually at a spiritual level, there's something going on there. There's a deeper connection between the both of you, and your care has probably deepened your respect and your love for your mum, and vice versa. Even though it might not feel like it in day to day, it'll be there. So it's taking place for sure, just not perhaps at that kind of overt level.
Absolutely. And I feel like it's quite extraordinary, the different kind of life spiritually and in terms of what we have to be enmeshed in that we can create in one generation, and how there's such an extraordinary opportunity when we really connect to the spiritual path and a really deep understanding of healing. And now, as you were saying, more of a emphasis on the emotional side, which perhaps wasn't available not that long ago, but we can really free up our ancestral trauma in extraordinary ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do that through working with plants. All plants have a unique resonance within themselves, which when we connect with that resonance, whether it's a tree or a plant or a flower, can bring us some form of healing, some emotional balance. So that each frequency and unique frequency of a plant can help us and help to rebalance us in a different way, because we are nature, and nature's inherent movement is towards balance anyway. Within ecosystems, they're so fragile because they exist on this real kind of point of balance. And so nature's always maintaining that balance. And so that's the same as us. That's why when we do get sick, our body naturally wants to come back to a place of health, back to balance. Plants and trees naturally want to balance us back to health. And because they work on a physical, emotional, and a spiritual level, just like us, because they have a consciousness, just like us, that works in exactly the same way as our consciousness, actually, then they can really help us to heal and to bring the balance back into our lives, into our consciousness, into our energy bodies that we really need. We can work with them in lots of different ways. Being outside with plants and sitting under trees and meditating under trees and with plants is one way, and that's really beautiful, especially to help cleanse your energy field, which can have a detrimental effect on your mind and on your emotional balance, and even on your personality if you've got attachments in your energy field. But we do pick up lots of kind of toxicities as we move through various kind of social settings. So being out with plants and trees and in nature is just like being at home. And so you just get kind of rebalanced back to a kind of a neutral setting point. And then we can go a bit deeper and we can ingest the plants and trees. And I tend to work with vibrational medicine. So essences, flower essences, plant essences. And these don't contain the chemical constituents of a plant. They are literally the bioresonance, the frequency of the plant held within the crystalline structure of water, which holds memory, and then fixed with a little bit of alcohol to fix that frequency. And then by taking that essence, it can help us to see those imbalances so that we do bring conscious awareness to them. So there are essences that just help to cancel them out, like the ones you can get in Boots in the pharmacy. And they just, oh, I'm angry, I don't want to feel it anymore, and it'll get rid of it for you. However, like I said earlier, that's not really the kind of healing I'm into. I prefer to look at what's causing the anger. So when we work with the spirits, the consciousness of the plants, with these essences, it brings up the root cause of that anger so that we can look at it and bring conscious awareness to it and do our integration and forgiveness and grief release, whatever it is around the wounding underneath that anger. And so that we can really, truly heal rather than just kind of pushing it under the carpet. Essences are a great way to work with plants and trees, teas. You know, I'm finding that as we're moving through this kind of like consciousness awakening, I'm finding that people's chakras are increasing. I'm finding with my clients, and therefore people's kind of vibration is increasing. And so people don't need so much strong medicines anymore. So I'm finding that all the water-based medicines like strong infusions or hydrosols and essences, these are working just as well as the kind of like the old school kind of like, you know, knock 'em dead kind of medicines like strong tinctures and psychoactive plants, which of course do work. And sometimes some people might need them, but I'm just talking in general that I'm finding that people are not needing that kind of forceful medicine anymore. They're much more attuned into the subtle realms and much more sensitive and need that more kind of nurturing kind of healing from the plants.
I want to come back to the different kinds of plants and how we can work them and really explore as well these stronger medicines and what can happen. But before that, I want to say thank you for the beautiful tinctures that you make that have this really, really nurturing, high quality to them and are beautiful friends. And I would love for you to share your relationship with one or two of the plants or trees that you work with and tell us how you came into such deep connection with that particular plant, whichever one you choose. I know you've got many.
I'm just trying to think who wants to actually speak. Foxglove is being quite forceful at the moment. Firstly, I make essences. I don't make tinctures, but all my plant spirits are infused into my essences, which are vibrational medicines.
Sorry, a tincture's a much stronger water
Yeah.
based.
Well, it's alcohol based. And so it's all of the plant, you know, you're kind of making it from the physical plant, whereas the essence is the vibration of the plant. So yeah, you're working in the more kind of subtler realms, but it can be just as powerful because we need to heal at that emotional and spiritual level in order to heal at the physical level. So those remedies at kind of emotional level really helps people to get down to the root cause of physical illnesses as well. So Foxglove. So I realized that Foxglove wanted to work with me when I woke up one morning and opened the curtains, and outside in the courtyard under a tree, a huge foxglove had arrived, about 6 foot tall, and was in full bloom, and I hadn't even noticed it. And I'd never had a foxglove in the garden before. So instantly, it just blew my mind. It's just like, what foxgloves like? They're just, especially large ones. Certain parts of the country, we seem to be able to get foxgloves that are like 6 and 7 foot tall, really big. They're a poisonous plant, of course. I didn't make an essence of that foxglove, but I just knew it was just not the right time to form that relationship with that plant. Everything kind of happens in the right timing with plants. It wasn't till probably a year later when I think I was meditating and it just came to me, foxglove. I was like, oh yes, I really would like to spend some more time with foxglove. So it was just coming into spring, and in the forest behind my house, I'd seen some foxgloves kind of sprouting up here and there. So I said to my friend, on the summer solstice, I think it was the summer solstice, or there was a specific kind of day, it might have been solstice or a full moon or something, I can't remember. I'm going to go up to the forest and make an essence with the foxgloves out there. But first I need to pop to the post office. So I jumped in the car, and as I'm driving to the post office, I turned the corner and I noticed a hill in front of me that's completely pink. And as I drove closer to it, they were foxgloves, and this entire hill was full of foxgloves. There must have been about 300,000 foxgloves on this field, and I'd not noticed them. And there just happened to be a little place I could park the car and a public footpath up into the field. So I parked the car, jumped out, and went into this field, and I was just blown away by the beauty of the pinkness and the power of foxgloves. They're poisonous plants, so they have very strong presences. That's where they're so enchanting, aren't they? You just want to look at them for ages, and you just want to crawl inside that little bell.
Yeah, it feels like it takes you into a whole other world and reality if you could just get inside there.
Yeah, and it does. So Foxglove said to me, you're not making an essence up there. This is where you're making your essence. So come back tomorrow on the solstice. And so I went back at the exact time of when solstice happened. And there was a Venusian association and a Mars and Venus alignment as well going on that particular solstice. And foxglove is associated with Venus. So I made the essence and I went back every day to meditate in that field until the foxgloves, pretty much every day, not every day, but many days, to meditate in that field with the foxgloves. And I just had profound heart healings. Nobody would go into that field. So it didn't matter if I was sat there crying my eyes out because I was alone. But I would make a little nest amongst all the foxgloves, and I'd just meditate and see what comes up, connect to the spirit, allow myself to connect to the spirit of foxglove, and allowed foxglove to bring some healing. And that's how I understand and work with the plant spirits and make that connection, is I allow them to heal me first. So then I can work out and understand how I can then take that medicine to others, to my clients, and to help others. So I had these profound healings in that field. And then I decided to do a month-long protocol with the essence, which is like a plant diet. It's an initiation where you take that. I took the essence every day for a month, and I did shamanic journeys to meet the spirit of the plant, and to learn and to take teachings from the plant spirit, and then to work out how we can work together. And so foxglove is now one of my main plant allies. And so foxglove is amazing at traveling between worlds. So soul retrieval is one of its jobs. Working with toxic cords, it's brilliant at undoing and releasing and cleansing toxic cords between people. And it's just a really fun being to work with. And the spirit always appears to me as an androgynous being. Quite often plant spirits are feminine, not all of them, but most of them seem to be to me. They're not necessarily that, but with the foxglove, I then discovered, after it appears as this androgynous being to me, I then discovered that the flowers, the top part of, when you've got the whole stem of flowers in full bloom, the top part are masculine and the bottom are feminine. So each plant is both male and female at the same time, which I just find fascinating and such a beautiful balance. You know, when I'm working in, and because when I'm cleansing people's energy fields, my job is to just bring balance. So foxglove's perfect. And of course, foxglove is quite, it's poisonous, very poisonous. It's very connected to the land of the dead. So ancestral work is quite good. But also there's this real kind of like, it's full of paradox, foxglove, because it's got this real kind of like trickster element, like prankster element to it. So when we're kind of doing our journeys together, you know, foxglove never tells me in advance what's going to happen. It's always in the moment and then plays tricks on me sometimes so that I can understand something. There's always a meaning to the trick so that I can then understand something or in a deeper way, or recognize something in a deeper way. And of course, foxglove is just really magical. You know, it's called I think it's called the enchanter's plant. It's called fairy bells. It's connected to the elven realm and the fairy realm. So you can actually journey through those bells. You know, they are like wormholes that can take you into other realms, into the other world. Yeah, it's a very magical plant. Yeah, my favorite ally, and really brings a lot of heart healing. So those Venusian qualities really help us to cleanse out the heart. Foxglove helps you to see what you're still carrying in your heart, particularly towards others, because it's a very kind of otherworldly plant. When you journey into the other world, you really have to be careful what you're carrying in your heart, because that's what you'll meet in that realm. And so foxglove, with that deep, strong connection to those realms, really helps us to see what we're still carrying in our heart towards others as we're recovering from our traumas and our wounds, etc. And just helps us to let go of them by just introducing more magic into our life and more joy at just being ourselves.
I can really understand why Foxglove was saying that they wanted to be part of this conversation. It feels like really potent medicine for these times.
Yeah. And in fact, all plants that are associated with Venus, you know, Venus is like the higher self of the earth. In esoterica, Venus is, you know, that's why we see her as the goddess, you know, Venus. And so all those beautiful Venusian qualities, okay, there's the shadow of Venus as well, you know, the consumerism and the overindulgence and, you know, in the good life. But the higher aspect of Venus is this beauty, grace, unconditional love. So all of the plants associated with Venus will express Venusian qualities in different ways. So the apple tree is a Venusian tree. Rose, obviously, is a Venusian plant. Vervain is a Venusian plant. So there's lots of, I think mugwort is associated with Venus as well as the earth and the moon. So there's lots of plants and trees associated with Venus. What I find the most beautiful about these plants and trees, and the most magical, just as that, you know, you have sunflowers and daisies that follow the sun as it goes across the sky. You know, the heads of the sunflowers and the daisies will kind of turn towards the sun and track it because they want that sun. You know, they love the sun and they're associated with it. They've got this deep, plants are deeply connected with aspects of our solar system. And so with Venus, the Venusian plants do that too, and they track Venus in the sky. The blossoms of the plants track Venus in the sky. So, as you know, Venus makes the flower of life pattern as it dances around its 8-year orbit it actually, as it goes through its retrograde cycles, etc., if you look on YouTube or something, there's beautiful videos that show you how Venus moves in the sky, and it creates this beautiful 5-pointed flower pattern. And the number 5 is the goddess. And so that pattern, that goddess pattern, is imprinted into the energetic framework, if you like, the kind of energetic architecture of the plants and trees, those Venusian plants and trees, that symbol, that goddess symbol, it's there, it's patterned within them. So when we ingest those plants and trees, we're ingesting and taking into us pure goddess energy. And we know that we need to be more connected to the earth to remember who we are, and that we need that deep, deep feminine healing and that deep connection. So I think all Venusian plants and trees can help us at these times.
It feels really special that we are here on Venus Day on Friday having this conversation, and that it's also Friday the 13th, which is such a powerful day for the feminine and the deep feminine, and that connection, that ability to be able to deeply listen and make medicines and be in connection.
Absolutely. And I think I'm having a Venus return today, if I'm not mistaken. I need to double check, but yeah, I think I'm having a Venus return as well. That's why all this Venus energy is coming out.
Beautiful. Is there a tree that you would like to share your journey with?
I would like to share about the yew tree.
I was going to ask you if you would share about the yew tree, but I also wanted to give space for whichever tree wanted to be shared.
The thing about the yew tree, though, is my journey is so vast and such a long one with the yew tree that it would literally, I could be sat here for a full 24 hours and probably not tell you the full story, but I'll give you a kind of a little overview. So the yew tree is quite a very different tree to any other tree. It has very animalistic qualities. And so the botanists don't ever know which category to put the tree in, because it just behaves in a completely different way to any other tree. And its power of regeneration is just phenomenal. And it's lived almost unchanged in its kind of DNA for about 250 million years. So it's been on this planet such a long time. I mean, I think humans or humanoids have been on the planet, I think, about 14 million years, but the yew tree 250 at least. And so they don't really know how it evolved. So its consciousness is vast and old and very advanced and very deeply, deeply spiritual tree. And so my journey started many years ago when I first moved back to this country. I'd lived overseas for about 15 years, and I actually moved to Wales.
And you'd been in India for a big part of that time?
I'd been in the Middle East, I'd been in India for 2 years, and I'd been in Italy for 2 years. I'd been in France for a year. So yeah, I'd had quite a journey. And then I went home to Wales and really started to connect with the plants and trees. But it was the yew tree really that kind of called me there, now that I look back over, to see your own journey with the yew tree, because the yew tree calls its people to it that it wants to work with. And so, but you don't kind of know it until years later, and when you kind of see the footprints of it over your life. So I'm sure it's a karmic thing, and perhaps in other lives I've worked with the yew tree as well, and that's why I've got this deep connection. But through a whole process of what appeared like synchronicities, but that probably weren't. They were, they were synchronistic, but they weren't coincidental. I moved to a cottage that sat near a circle of yew trees, and then a friend invited me for lunch, and there was somebody at that lunch who really loved yew trees as well, and said she wanted to show me her favourite yew tree circle. So I went with her to this beautiful grove that was just in Wales that was just amazing. And then she introduced me to somebody else who had written a book about the yew tree, and then she introduced me to somebody else who to Michael Dunning, the U shaman. And he was wanting to bring his U Mysteries body of work back to the UK because he's Scottish but lives in America. And so I said, yes. I heard about his work and how he'd spent 9 years underneath a yew tree to heal himself. But during that time, the beings that work through the yew had imparted to him a body of work that had been lost for about 1,000 years, the yew Mysteries. I helped him set up his kind of mystery school to teach that. And so that took 5 years. And after 5 years, I became one of the first people to be initiated into this body of work. There was a small group of about 20 of us. And then that's when the real teaching and work with the yew tree began once I'd finished, because the yew Mysteries is not something that you teach. It's not something that you learn to just teach somebody else at all. In fact, Michael doesn't want you to do that. The yew tree doesn't want you to do that. It's not about that. It's about implementing that, what you learn within the mystery teachings, you implement it and you allow that transformation that the yew tree brings to take place within yourself, so that then it reveals your own medicine, it reveals your natural state of who you truly are and what gifts you've got to give to the world. And that's your unique connection to the yew tree and how the yew tree wants to work with you. And that's what you take out into the world if you're going to. So I moved after I'd graduated from his school. I moved into a house that sat underneath a huge yew tree. And so for 4 years, I meditated and trained in my healing practice underneath the yew tree and with the beings that come through the yew and with the yew tree spirit holding the space and teaching me how to work from a non-polarized perspective, how to work outside of duality. And the yew tree takes you back, strips you, I mean, it can be quite brutal, but the yew tree strips you back through all the layers of who you think you are, or the identity you think you've got, right back to the core essence of who you are. And that can take you back to your mythological origins, which can sound a bit far out for people, but, the yew tree is old. It's known, it comes from mythology. It goes back to mythological times. So you can heal yourself and know yourself right back to that your mythological origins. So perhaps you've incarnated into other realms or, as other beings on this planet. It's not just been, the human era is quite short actually compared to the different epochs that have taken place, whether it's Atlantis or way back to Lemuria and different ones. And so there's been different races of beings. There've been races of giants on this earth. There've been races of the she, the shining ones. So why wouldn't we have kind of been a part of that? We're eternal after all. My journey with the yew tree was really that, about really kind of honing my healing skills, allowing my own medicine to come through, and working with the yew tree to do all of that. Yeah, so it's been quite a journey.
I feel like I could sit and listen to more of that story for the next 24 hours. But just hearing about it, it wakes something up, like I can really feel. And I'm sure that everyone listening is feeling that too, like that connection. And for me, the trees have been such a potent part of me just being able to be who I am and hold what I hold, and having the rich and extraordinary trees that we have here in the UK, and here in the Southwest where I've been for the last few years, and just being able to go and sit and talk to the trees and listen and share the things that are hard to say to humans and to meditate and to feel that really extraordinary healing that happens through my cells and in my body, and how we can transform with these beautiful, beautiful friends.
Yeah, they're benevolent. If you've got a worry or a concern or an issue, I just go out to a tree, I align just through my intention, I align my energy field to the tree, asking permission first, of course, because the tree might be busy doing something else. And then if I get permission for a healing, then I'll just say, can I give you this? Can you help me transform this? Or can you show me how? And sometimes I will get an immediate response, immediate healings from the yew tree, where I've not been able to, I've had asthmatic kind of condition years ago. And I went to a yew tree and I just felt these kind of like these tendrils of light come out of the yew tree into my back, and was just cleaning all of my lungs as I sat there. And then I just felt so much better, and my lungs were relieved. And then other times there's been concerns that I've had where I've asked the tree, please, can you help me to resolve this particular issue? And what I found is that I might not get the answer immediately. The plant spirits and the tree spirits don't just work internally, they work in the external world as well. The more you work with plants and trees, you realize that the inner world and the external world are actually the same thing. So the tree spirit will create a situation in my life, or a happening, or a meeting with somebody, where that piece of information I need, or that healing, is brought into my awareness, that I'm then able to heal or activate the healing, or, whatever it is. And so it might not come immediately with trees, because they have a slower consciousness than us. But usually, most often, you get your request answered. It might not be in the way you expect it, and it might not be in the time frame you want it, but you generally get a response and an answer. They're so beautiful and so supportive and so forgiving of us.
Thank you for tuning in. If you are enjoying this episode, do join our membership. For a small contribution, you can be part of our community, where we deepen the conversation and offer spaces of learning and embodiment. As a member, you are a patron supporting the making of this show, keeping the episodes full length, free and accessible for all. And you receive a number of benefits, such as monthly soul space, going deeper sessions, access to our library of workshops, and discounts on all our online and in-person experiences. Our membership is what makes us able to make this show and stay advertising free in a world that is always trying to sell us stuff we don't need. Head to allthatweare.org/membership to find out more and join today. I really hear you with the subtle and the gentleness of the way in which we can connect at these times, and how rich that experience can be. We're also at a time where psychedelic medicines are becoming more known and more mainstream, and we're in this place where, some of them may be legalized, and many more people are being exposed to psychoactive plant medicine ceremonies, and these kind of, very like strong ways of creating a relationship and healing. And I know it can be so powerful for so many people, and it has been so powerful for so many people, and it can be this incredible opening and really taking somebody into like a whole different way of seeing the world and how alive it is. There's also a lot of people that are suffering in extraordinary ways, or find themselves changed in ways that are really, really terrifying through some of these medicines. And I wonder what you can share around this, because I feel like you are someone that I know has a really deep understanding of this balance and this ability to clear, and have seen firsthand so many experiences of what can happen. I would love for you to share how somebody can enter into a relationship with one of these stronger medicines in a safer way, and what's helpful to be aware of?
It's a really important point. There is an explosion of this, an easy availability of these plant medicines, but they are medicines, so they're not necessarily for everybody. While I have had some beautiful experiences with plant medicines, these stronger medicines in the past with iboga, ayahuasca, San Pedro, and our beautiful own native mushrooms, I've been helped because I have a background in meditation and Buddhist studies. So I understood the mind, and I understood how to hold my center, and I understood how the mind works. I think a lot of people that are maybe getting traumatized from their experiences don't have that understanding, and are perhaps just stepping into that expanded state of awareness, not knowing what they're looking at or what they're dealing with. So when you take these medicines, you are opening yourself up very quickly to the spirit world. And while we desperately want that deeper connection to something bigger than us, and to remember that we are part of this great universe, and to have a proof that, and kind of like a direct experience of that realm, to prove that we are spiritual. I'm sure I am. For many reasons, not just that. But, for healing, people want healing. We're desperate to get healing, and to true healing, and to get to the bottom of things, because everybody's dealing with so many things at the moment, so much. But by opening ourselves up, people are blasted into the astral space and not sure what they're looking at. So it can be deeply traumatic to re-experience your traumas again in quite a kind of a brutal way, really. And of course, these plants that people are dealing with are very complex, especially ayahuasca. It's an extremely complex consciousness that takes such a long time to train with if you want to work with that plant. I think they say at least 10 years before you then take that to others, because it is so profound. And of course, it has a very different consciousness to the way we think. So in our country, we're not jungle people, and so when I went to the Amazon, and I even saw the nettles over there, the nettles are like huge with massive spikes. I was like, wow, they're like nettles on steroids in the Amazon. But it just kind of highlighted to me that the plants of the Amazon are like that. And the people of the Amazon are strong, they're tough, they're big built. They have a very different mindset to us. And so you introduce a medicine of that land to our consciousness, and it can be very brutal for some people, because we are seen as very soft over there. And we live in quite, very nice, usually nice kind of luxury environments compared to the people who live in their self-built huts in the jungle and have to hunt every day. And it's tribal warfare going on, so it's quite a different experience over there. And so the plants of the land and the people are reflective of each other. So it should be a big decision whether to actually step into that kind of realm, because you're stepping into a warrior environment. So every plant and tree has a morphogenic field, a field of information within which you're stepping into when you ingest it. And so that morphogenic field carries within it all the ways it's been worked with. And there are many of these plant medicines have been used for quite dark purposes, or tribal warfare that we just don't understand. It's not necessarily dark, but it's warfare. It's been used and abused as well, that plant spirit. And so when you take a plant medicine, you're stepping into all of that as well. And so do you really think you can handle it? yes, people have amazing, it's a powerful plant. You can have amazingly transformational experiences with it, but quite often it comes at a price. My own experience is quite a good example of that, is that when I first took, not with iboga, but ayahuasca, when I first took ayahuasca, within a week I came out in head to toe eczema. And I hadn't had eczema since I was a child, and I just had little patches of it on my arm, and it wasn't even that bad. But I came out in head to toe eczema, and it was like I was burning up from the inside out, and I was in pain. I'd wake up in the night screaming. I was crying for 6 months, and it took me 3 years to get to the root cause of that eczema. And I did, I cured it in the end. However, it was brutal. And when I've subsequently trained as a healer, it doesn't need to be like that. I didn't need to take that route in order to get down to the root cause of my unhappy state, of my kind of wounding. I didn't have to take that route. Healing can be gentle. It's not pleasant a lot of the time, because we have to get things out and we have to see things, and sometimes we need some kind of stronger plants to help us get there. But that was quite a brutal experience in my mind. And then when I see others who come to me for kind of help with their PTSD from taking the medicines, or negative experiences with the people holding the space, or entities that they feel they've picked up during that space, it's quite sad that there's just not enough understanding of the plant, and therefore the space isn't held very well. So what I'm seeing is that it's very difficult to actually find someone who is trustworthy enough to hold such a strong space for such a powerful plant and provide the aftercare support that's needed. Because when you take the medicine, that's the first part of your journey. There's a whole integration process that can take years. So just taking, plant medicine once is years worth of integrations. Taking these medicines week after week is, quite surprising to me. And I don't know how people are still stood upright and able to deal with all those processes that are being kickstarted. And of course, there are different types of psychoactive plants. You don't have to if you're needing something a little bit stronger than working with the common native plants, then we have our own psychoactive plants. Wormwood is a psychoactive plant, and so it's a very beautifully powerful shadow plant. Artemisia absinthium, it's slightly toxic, so you have to know the dosage, etc., and how long you can take it for. But that will definitely bring things out of the shadows for you, and help you in that way. And we have our own magic mushrooms, of course. They can be deeply healing. They're quite joyful and quite bouncy. Then they're not necessarily quite so kind of brutal like ayahuasca. So there's different types of these psychoactive medicines. And so I just really kind of err on the side of caution with them, really.
And it's important also to talk about reverence and respect and the setting that you're in with any of these plants, and to share, like for me, if I work with a plant in ceremony, I've always had really beautiful experiences that I've managed to integrate really gracefully, actually, and it's been really, really powerful. But I had to call you in an emergency once when I was given magic mushrooms in a chocolate at a dinner party without knowing, and then was in an environment that my consciousness just will not let me experience those kind of medicines in a situation that isn't sacred. And the impact was huge, and I was so grateful that I knew who to call. It really made me wonder how much people are carrying that they don't know about. And because for me, I am really sensitive, and my field is very clean, I really do feel everything that I'm experiencing. And so it was incredibly loud and hard to ignore. But for many people, that's not the case. And so there may be entities and other things that come in that they're not even aware of, that are then massively influencing thoughts and decisions and everything that they then do.
So when I clear my clients' energy fields, about 80% of what I clear is not theirs. When you're in a space with lots of other people and you're all psychically open, and perhaps the space isn't held very well, then you can come away from that ceremony with more than you went in with. Absolutely.
And especially if it's a party.
Especially if it's a party. Yeah. But what I found as well is that when we approach our common native plants, and these I'm talking about your non-psychoactive plants, when we approach them in the same sacred and reverential way, in ceremony, in sacred space, they can be just as psychedelic, but just not as brutally psychedelic. So holding ceremony with different plants and recognizing the power of these plants, because the consciousness, the eternal consciousness that works through the plants, these beings, through common native plants, these beings are powerful. So just as you've got one individual plant and it will have, or tree, and it will have its own individual personality, there is an eternal aspect, just like we have an eternal spirit. There's an eternal spirit of the tree or plant species. It's the overarching Davic species of the spirit of the species. So the overarching Davic spirit of oak rather than the spirit of that particular oak. So these eternal plant spirits, this aspect of the plant spirits, these beings are, once you really get to know them and work with them, they're ascended masters, they are bodhisattvas, they are high witches, high elves, wizards, druids. So we're working with like really highly spiritual beings through our common native plants and trees. And when you step into that space, sacred space with them, and as you know, when you open a sacred space, everything becomes amplified. Your psychic visions become amplified, your emotions become amplified, and so your connection to the plant spirit becomes amplified. And so you're meeting these really high level beings. And so you're healing at a much more kind of like sophisticated way than with just being blasted open in a hit and hope kind of way, which is what happened with me with ayahuasca, just kind of blasted about 150 lifetimes of grief out of me. It's actually a much more sophisticated way of working and healing. It brings you into a deeper sense of sacredness because you have to feel into yourself in a deeper way. And kind of you step into, rather than the healing happening to you because you've got no choice, because you're just blasted with some of the medicine plants, it's a co-creation with the plant spirits. So there's a lot more you get a lot more self-responsibility comes into it a lot more. You become stronger within yourself. You have a lot more of a sense of sovereignty. It's just a much cleaner, much deeper way of working, I think, and healing with the plants.
And that creating of a sacred space, it doesn't have to be a big deal, and it is something that people can do themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. There are many ways to create sacred spaces. I'm trained in the Celtic tradition, so I use the traditional 7 directions. But some people might be a little bit more witchy inclined. So, there's the pentagram. You can use different thought forms to create beautiful spaces around you. You can step into an oak grove, or a yew grove. You could put a beautiful blue flame around you. There's lots of different ways. But the stronger your sacred space, the stronger you can open a sacred space. And this is a whole kind of, a whole training goes into that. Because I have to open a very strong sacred space in order to be able to work deeply within my client's energy fields and psyche with my plant spirits. If it was just a flimsy sacred space, a flimsy boundary, then I wouldn't be able to go very deep with that. And so there's a whole training, building up your spirit team, bringing in different aspects of the land, etc., and of different beings and realms, and getting to know them to kind of really build up a sacred space. So there are simple sacred spaces right through to kind of very fortified ones.
Amazing. Yeah, I'm sure that our friends listening would love to find out more about your trainings after this conversation. I'm curious for you, and it might feel like it happened so long ago and you're so deep on the path that you're on that it's not an easy question to answer. But were you called into this path in a particular way? Is there a moment that happened?
Not really. I think it's just been an evolvement over my lifetime. I'm double Virgo with Scorpio rising, so I was always going to be a healer, really, and working with plants. But I've always been I would do meditation as a child, single pointed meditation, and I didn't even realize what I was doing until I started studying Buddhism later in my life. I've always done yoga. And then I did work in the corporate world for a while and in Dubai, and that just really tipped me over the edge. I felt like I was dying inside. I just saw my life stretching out of me and there was nothing in it. And so I had to make a drastic choice. And so I moved to India and just decided I need to change my life because I'm depressed. I need to actually be working with what makes my heart sing, what I feel I want to do in the world. And so I just spent some years exploring different spiritual paths, different meditations, just going inwards. And, there was some kind of dead ends, of course, while I orientated myself. But then it was the plants that found me, actually. I'd never really Buddhism, but realized that there was a lot of kind of flaws in it for our modern mind. I just knew that I was here to kind of help people to awaken. And so the form of healing I do is part of the awakening process. It's orientated towards helping the awakening process. It was plants. It was somebody came to one of my events years ago and asked if I'd ever heard of plant medicine, and I hadn't, and then invited me to an iboga ceremony. And that basically changed my life. It was a very gentle ceremony. It wasn't like I know there's a lot of stories about iboga being cracking your head open, and I'm sure it does, but it didn't with me. It was very gentle. But I sat and had a conversation for an hour with the spirit of the plant. And I was doing my master's in Buddhism at the time. And so it was teaching me in Buddhist concepts and allowing me to have a direct experience of these things that were just in my head. They were just theory for me at that point. And so I could ask about all the things I didn't quite understand about what I was studying. And the plant taught me. And so that just blew my mind, changed my whole perspective on life, and reorientated me towards, okay, that's a beautiful, beautiful plant spirit from Africa. What do my plants and trees have to say? So I just went on this big exploration with my own common native plants and trees, just allowed them to heal me so that I could bring that healing to others. And of course, I trained in plant spirit healing with Pam Montgomery. I've had some amazing teachers. My beautiful teacher, David Leasley on the Isle of Man, taught me magic and taught me how to integrate all of the plant spirit healing and all of the U mysteries with Michael, my Amazonian teacher, and blended all that together to create my own practice. So, yeah, that's been my path.
Beautiful. And yeah, I want to also just echo gratitude to the spirit of iboga, as this was also my first medicine and such a deep, deep friend. And I have so much love and respect for what I've been shown by that medicine.
Absolutely. I went on a pilgrimage in February this year to Africa to give my gratitude because I'd never been to Africa. And even though I only went to South Africa, I wanted to get to that continent, just to give gratitude to Mama Africa for all of that beauty that she's given to me. And I don't feel I've really got any connection to that land in this life, but I clearly have in a spiritual way. That's beautiful.
Yeah, and it's interesting because a lot of people are like scared of that medicine. The mystic that I worked with that medicine always said that the ayahuasca is a master teacher and it's not meant to be the first one that you go to. And yet that is kind of the common journey for so many. And I worked with Iboga for a long time and held space and ceremonies way before I then experienced any of the other plants. And I was so grateful for the grounding that I was given and the depth of shadow work that I was able to do, and the way that I was shown how to move energy and move between worlds. And that for me, alongside my ancestral lineage and Hinduism and Jainism and then being on this land here in England with the paganism and the priestesses of Avalon and all of that, how that's formed such a powerful journey and path.
Yeah, and it shows, Amisha, because you've got beauty inside and out. So yeah, blessings to Iboga.
Yeah, and also somehow the ability to really bring up a lot of people in ways that can be incredibly beautiful and also can be quite shadow filled. and,
Yeah.
and I have to remind myself that it's not me. Sometimes it's the it's the spirits that are doing it.
Yeah. Somebody once said to me that Iboga doesn't really change us, it just takes off the rough edges. And I thought that was quite interesting. It certainly changed me at one level, but it doesn't necessarily change who we are. Whereas I've really seen big personality changes in people who have had other plant medicines, ayahuasca, etc. But Iboga doesn't seem to do that.
It's so grounded and it takes you so much deeper into yourself, and it shows you how your life and your experience and your thoughts and your life is deeply spiritual and beautiful. And I find that grounded earthiness of it's like you do then go out, but you go in first, and in this really extraordinary way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful plant. But there's the elder tree in this country is kind of like our ayahuasca, iboga type medicine, and really helps us. It's very powerful, the elder tree. So we don't necessarily have to, because I think iboga is actually endangered. Just to remind people that we have very similar plants here, like elder, that can do a very similar job.
Yeah, and that's there for everything from not needing white sage or palo santo to clear space, but looking for the plants that we have, mugwort, what we might have in our own garden that we could make bundles with, or find people that are out in the lands here collecting what often gets passed up as weeds that are actually these really potent medicines that we can use in living a sacred life.
Absolutely. And we've forgotten what it is to be sacred. We actually have forgotten what it means to feel sacred and to behave and act in a sacred way. And the plants really help us to get back in touch with that, get in touch with that deeply spiritual aspect of ourselves that has been forgotten in our materialistic world. There's a whole sliding scale of sacredness, and so the more you work with plants, the more you work in ritual, it just takes you deeper and deeper into that deep reverence for life itself and for the gift that we've been given.
And really into that understanding of our interconnectedness and our entanglement.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
What is the call to action that you would like to leave our friends listening with? And it can be an inner one and something in the world, some kind of activism.
There is a charity that I support called Plant Life, because we are suffering from a lack of biodiversity in our islands. The reason for that, I might not agree with plant life, but still they work to help repopulate the biodiversity and repopulate the plants that are kind of lacking in our environment. And that's really important because we just don't have the medicine plants in the landscape like we used to due to agriculture and
pesticides.
Yeah. So plant life, it's a great one. And also on a personal level, I just invite people just to explore our common plants. You know, they're actually way more magical and powerful than people think. And like you said, we're conditioned to think that they're weeds, a lot of them, like dandelion and things, but there's some real potent healing and reconnection that the plants are willing to offer, you know, and ready to offer. Yeah, really encourage people to start to connect to the plants in their garden.
Thank you, Emma. How would you like people to connect with you? How can they find out more about your work and your offerings?
My main website is plantconsciousness.com. And then my School of Natural Esoterics is naturalesoterics.org.
Brilliant. I feel like I've barely said anything during this conversation. I've been so happy to listen and to feel all of the beautiful plants that have been present here with us. Thank you for all the wisdom that you've shared and for bringing all of these plants here with us as well.
Oh, my pleasure. And thank you for all the work that you do. You know, you do some beautiful work in the world, and these podcasts are really important to help people tune into different aspects of their inner life and their spirituality. So, yeah, thank you for the beauty you bring to the world as well.
Thank you for listening. We hope that you have enjoyed this episode and it has sparked some inspiration and creativity in you. As always, you can find links to everything we mention in this episode, download our book, and discover so much more over on allthatweare.org. We give space to our guests to share their perspective without debating it or fact-checking, as this approach allows for deep, unedited conversations from the heart. We trust your discernment and wisdom to take what is useful and challenge what isn't in your own understanding. We offer spaces for discussion and integration in our membership community, which we would love for you to join. We don't believe in selling you things you don't need through this podcast, and so it's made possible by you, our beautiful community. If you loved this and would like to connect more deeply with us, please join our membership. You choose what you contribute based on our sliding scale, and you become a patron whose support makes this podcast happen, as well as receiving access to a library of many resources and invitations to nourishing events. Please also hit subscribe and leave us a review wherever you listen so others can find us. This podcast is made by an all-female global team. Me, Amisha Gadiali, producer and host, Annegret Afolderbach, who crafts the words that accompany each episode, and Mary Chan, who edits the sound so skillfully. All That We Are celebrates all that we are already and the untapped potential that lives inside us. It invites the full power of the more than human world, nature, the unseen, our ancestors and our future generations. It reminds us that we never exist in silo, through borders, timelines, or polarity, that in each and every moment, all that we are is here.